Welcome back to Doberman Planet. Look, if you are getting a Doberman puppy, you'll definitely have a lot of questions about how to feed your dog properly. And I've been getting a lot of emails about this lately, honestly. I don't know if more people are getting Doberman puppies or what, but that's why we're doing this video. We're gonna cover everything you need to know about feeding your Doberman puppy. When to feed them, where to feed them, what to feed them, and how much they should be eating. So let's get started. Really quick before we dive in, I do want to mention that I'm not a veterinarian or a canine nutritionist, and it is always best to talk to one of these when you're planning out how and what you'll be feeding your dog. So definitely keep that in mind. I'm a Doberman trainer. I work with owners of Dobermans all the time, and what I recommend in this video is based on my own experience or that of the owners that I work with. Okay, the first thing you're gonna have to do when you're bringing home a new Doberman puppy is decide what you're going to feed your dog. And you have a few options. Option number one is you just do a commercial kibble option. Now, this is a good option because, well, it's easy, it's cheap, and the food lasts a really long time, and it's very, very shelf stable. You can buy a ton of it and store it away. And if you're planning this route, I'm a big fan personally of Purina Pro Plan for Dobermans, and it's one of the absolute most popular kibble foods for Dobermans. I like their Focus line of foods. Stick to their puppy formula though if you do this. So if you're doing kibble, this is my recommendation. Now the second option, and a lot of people swear by this, is a raw food diet. This can be way better nutritionally than just a dry processed kibble diet. And if you do it right, it can lead to really cool things like shinier coat, visibly less anxiety with your dog, and potentially a healthier, longer life. But unfortunately though, in my opinion, very unfortunately, it really can be really difficult to getting the right balance of vitamins and minerals and nutrients and so on. So unless you really study this stuff and you know exactly what you're doing, or you're a nutritionist, it can be tough. And no, you can't just toss in a bunch of food in a bowl and hope that it's balanced right. It really doesn't work that way. There's potential to do more harm than good if done incorrectly with a raw diet. Now the third option, and this one is the one I urge my viewers to do quite often, and that's to do a fresh human grade food that's kind of gently cooked by a reputable company for your dog. This takes just a ton of the guesswork out of balancing those nutrients, and it really helps reduce the risk of harmful bacteria being present in that food that like a raw diet, you could have that potential. So things like salmonella or E. coli, those are things you need to consider. And some nutrients actually become more easily absorbed by the digestive system after a slow cooking process. There's really a lot of potential good, human grade options out there that you can do for your Doberman. And the biggest downside I see, honestly, is just cost. It tends to be a bit expensive at times, especially if you just sign up for the first service you see. A lot of owners now are actually starting to do, as a result of this, half and half. It helps reduce the cost. They do half human grade fresh dog food and half kibble, and they mix it together. So that's one great way to bring down the cost of what I think is otherwise definitely the best option. But if this is a new Doberman that you're just bringing home, besides picking your new food out, make sure to get some of their old food too to feed them for a short time to kind of help with transitioning. And I'll explain more about that in 1 minute, but you'll need their old food also. Now for new Doberman puppies, the number of meals per day that you give them is a pretty important thing to decide. Here's a breakdown of how many meals they should have at different ages. Puppy Dobermans, so 6 to 12 weeks old, they should be eating about 4 meals per day. Young Dobermans, somewhere between 12 weeks and 12 months of old, 3 meals a day. And adult Dobermans, which I consider to be 1 year of age or older, 2 meals per day. More smaller meals throughout the day is generally better for your dog than fewer larger meals. So if you want to stick with 4 meals per day for a longer stretch of time than what I just suggested before reducing it down to 3, or if you want to stick with 3 meals longer before reducing it down to 2, that's perfectly fine. In fact, it's probably a little bit better. So spread these meals evenly throughout the day and ensure that they're equal portions to each other. So for example, if your puppy needs 1,500 calories per day and you're feeding them 4 meals a day, each meal should be roughly 375 calories. That's because 1,500 calories divided by 4 meals, that's 375 calories per meal. Okay, so you figured out what to feed your Doberman, you figured out how many meals a day to give them, you have some of their old food and their new food all on hand. Now, once you have your puppy, you need to transition them over to that new food and off of the old food that they're eating before. Guys, when doing this, it's so important to transition really smoothly and slowly over to the new food to avoid upsetting their stomach. Also, frankly, it might be a really good idea to wait a few days before transitioning them over so that your puppy has a chance to get used to their new environment in your house before this whole transition even begins, because the whole experience of being in a house can be very stressful enough without an additional stressful change of their diet all in their system at the same time. Once you do begin the transition, basically you'll want to slowly mix in more and more of their new food into each meal while subtracting some of their old food as you go until they're fully transitioned onto the new food you want to feed them. This makes it easiest on their system. Okay, so here's a suggested schedule for how to progress this. And yes, this is definitely errors on the side of a slow side of this progression, and that's on purpose because slower tends to be safer here. So I like to do it over about a 10-day period. So the first couple days, 90% of their old food and 10% of their new food. Then days 3 and 4, we're up to about 75% of their old food and about 25% of their new food, and so on. You know, days 5 and 6, you're about half and half, and so on all the way until you get to day 10, and then ultimately after day 10, you're 100% transitioned onto their new food. Remember to always watch really closely for signs of digestive upset and consult with your vet if you notice any issues while your dog is transitioning foods. Okay, so the amount of food that your puppy needs. This will depend on the specific food that you've chosen. So check the packaging of your food for a feeding chart, which will usually be provided on the food. And the guidelines are usually based on your puppy's age, their current weight, and their ideal adult weight. If your food tells you, say, a daily amount to serve your dog, don't forget to divide that by the number of meals your Doberman is having per day to determine how much to feed them at any given sit-down meal. Here's a chart in case it's helpful for you guys. I made this up. It's based on what Purina Pro Plan recommends on their bag. But remember, this can vary a lot based on the food. So definitely take a look at the specific food that you pick. It's really important to read the bag of whatever food you feed your dog and base the amounts from that, because if I tell you, say, 2 cups of food, well, 2 cups of food might be a very different number of calories depending on what type of food you're actually feeding. Now, keep in mind too that Dobermans tend to have a lot of muscle mass and that really high working drive energy. So personally, I always feed a bit over these recommendations for my Dobermans, and they've always maintained a really healthy body weight. Really just kind of judge it based on how your dog develops. And to kind of give you an idea on that, as adults, you should generally see about 1 rib visible when you're looking at them from the side. That's kind of a rule of thumb Doberman owners tend to use. So if you see 2 ribs from the side, they tend to be a little bit on the too skinny side. And if you can make out, no ribs at all, if you can't make out any of them, then they tend to be a little bit on the heavy side. But that's for adults, not really puppies. Now, making sure you're feeding your Doberman puppy a really high quality, nutritious diet, that's really crucial for their growth and development. And that's why I always highly recommend Ollie's fresh human grade dog food, and why we've taken them on as our sponsor here at Doberman Planet, because Ollie, they use real clean ingredients with no fillers, no byproducts or artificial preservatives, none of that stuff, and their food's gently cooked slowly to help preserve the nutrients. And that's really a good thing to do. Ollie's recipes, they're crafted with vet nutritionists to ensure that they're nutritionally balanced and portioned specifically for your dog. So you got no guesswork here on nutrients like there is when you're trying to piece together your own meal at home for your dog. And they use high quality animal proteins like real chicken, beef, turkey, lamb, and even fresh pork as a primary source of protein in their meals. They also go the extra step and they actually pair these proteins with plant-based proteins like peas, chickpeas, and lentils, and it provides a complete, balanced meal for dogs of all ages. One of the biggest benefits too, on top of all this, is that it's delivered right to your door on a super convenient, flexible schedule. So no more, last minute scrambles to the pet store worrying about, grabbing food before you run out. So check out Ollie. Click the link in the description down below and use our coupon code to get 60% off your first box. Trust me, your Doberman puppy will thank you. Okay, so let's talk about when to feed your Dobie. Definitely spread out your puppy's meals evenly throughout the day and make these rock solid, consistent feeding times. The more they can predict when they're gonna get that food to eat, the more of a routine that will be established. And surprisingly, you can actually see less anxiety as a result of a rock solid routine also. Here's a suggested feeding schedule for you. Okay, so from 6 to 12 weeks of age, a great feeding schedule, because you need to have 4 meals typically, is at 7 a.m., 11 a.m., 3 p.m., and 7 p.m. This is very consistent throughout the day and evenly spread. Then from 12 weeks to 1 year, we're down to 3 meals a day. So 7, 1, and 7 tends to be pretty good. And then at 1 year or older, most Doberman owners tend to go down to 2 meals per day, and a 7 a.m. Breakfast and a 7 p.m. dinner seems to be just right for these dogs. But whatever exact schedule you pick, and it might vary a little bit based on your schedule, like work and that kind of thing, but consistency is really the most important thing. Try to feed your puppy at the exact same time every day to help them feel secure and reduce their anxiety around feeding time, so they're never wondering about when and where their food's coming from. Now, as your puppy goes, you'll need to adjust the food you're giving them. So keep a close eye on your Doberman's weight, their activity level, and just their overall health to make sure they're getting the right amount of food. Really, your veterinarian can provide the best guidance on this. So if you notice weight gain or weight loss or just constant hunger, or maybe they're really lethargic throughout the day, make small adjustments and then just wait and observe your puppy's response as you go. Also, upping the quality of the food that you feed your Doberman can also help here greatly as well, and you could start to see a real big difference there also. Now, I wouldn't be doing the Dobermans justice if I didn't at least talk about bloat real quick, because this is a serious condition that Dobermans are really prone to. Essentially, it's when the stomach can get all twisted up and filled with gas, and it can, and it does, really kill a lot of Dobermans since they're so vulnerable to this. Luckily, there's ways that you can help prevent this from happening by doing a few simple things as your Doberman owner. Things such as limiting physical exercise before and after eating, at least 1 hour minimum. 2 hours is even better, but reducing stress, especially around feeding time, that can help a lot with bloat. Slowing down their eating, so like a slow feeder bowl works really well here, or feeding smaller, more frequent meals, that kind of helps here also. Maintaining a healthy body weight is really important. Also, always providing fresh water. But something kind of important here, avoid letting them drink too much or too quickly right after eating, because that tends to, they tend to do this a lot, and that tends to increase the risk of bloat also. If you have any questions or you need further guidance, or maybe you just have a comment you want to throw out there to help other people, leave a comment down below, and also check the description of this video, because I'll put some good Doberman specific articles and resources down there so you can dive more in depth into this feeding issue. Don't forget to hit the like button if you've enjoyed this video, and of course subscribe to us for more helpful tips and advice on raising a happy, healthy Doberman. Also, if you're interested in trying Ollie's fresh human grade dog food, which I think is some of the best out there, since they are the sponsor of Doberman Planet, click the link down below in the description area. It'll be right down in the description of this video. And you also get 50% off your first box with our coupon code, which will be down there as well. Your puppy is gonna love it. Thanks for watching, guys. Keep being great Doberman breed ambassadors, and I'll see you next time.